describe someone to you and tell me if this sounds familiar. They're 64 years old, about to retire. They've worked for 40 years. They've been responsible. They contributed to their 401k consistently. They've got $500,000 saved up for retirement. $500,000. That sounds like a lot of money, right? That sounds like they crushed it. They did everything the financial advisors told them to do. They saved 10% of their income. They invested in target date funds. They stayed the course through market crashes. They're in the top 15% of Americans their age in terms of retirement savings. They should be set. They should be able to retire comfortably, travel a little, enjoy their golden years, not worry about money. That's what they've been told. That's what the retirement calculators promised. That's what 40 years of financial discipline was supposed to deliver. But here's what's keeping them up at night. They just ran the real numbers, not the optimistic projections their advisor showed them, the real numbers, and they're terrified. Because $500,000 sounds like a lot until you actually try to live on it. Until you factor in healthcare costs that keep rising, until you account for inflation eating away at purchasing power, until you realize that the 4% withdrawal rule everyone talks about was designed for a different economic reality, until you understand that one major health crisis or one bad sequence of market returns in the early years can wipe out decades of savings. They just realized that their $500,000, which took 40 years to build, might not even last 10 years in retirement, and they have no backup plan. They can't go back to work at 75. They can't rebuild. This is it. If you've been saving for retirement and assumed that hitting some magic number would solve everything, if you've got money in a 401k and haven't actually calculated how long it will last, if you think $500,000 or $1 million is automatically enough, this video is going to scare you. And then it's going to show you what you actually need to do. My name is John, and I spend way too much time studying retirement failure rates and why people with seemingly adequate savings run out of money. And what I've discovered is genuinely disturbing. The retirement advice most people have been following is catastrophically wrong for modern retirees. If this topic concerns you, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up, because what I'm about to explain could save you from running out of money when you're too old to fix it. Here's the thing that most people don't understand about retirement savings. The number itself, whether it's $500,000 or $1 million, is meaningless without context. What matters is the withdrawal rate, the sequence of returns, the inflation environment, the healthcare costs, the longevity, and the tax implications. And when you factor all of those variables into the equation, $500,000 doesn't go nearly as far as you think it does. Let me show you why. Let's start with the most basic calculation that almost everyone gets wrong, the 4% rule. You've probably heard of it. The idea is that you can safely withdraw 4% of your retirement savings each year, adjusted for inflation, and your money will last 30 years. So with $500,000, you can withdraw $20,000 in year one, then adjust that amount for inflation each subsequent year, and you should be fine. Sounds reasonable, right? Except this rule was developed in 1994 by financial advisor William Bengen based on historical market returns from 1926 to 1992. It assumed a portfolio of 50% stocks and 50% bonds. It assumed historical average returns. It assumed historical inflation rates. It assumed you retire at 65 and die at 95. And most importantly, it assumed a retirement expense pattern and market environment that no longer exists. The 4% rule is broken, and if you follow it today, there's a very real chance you'll run out of money when you're too old to fix it. You've been run the real numbers for a 65-year-old retiring today with $500,000 saved. Using the 4% rule, they withdraw $20,000 in year one. But wait, that's before taxes. If this is a traditional 401k or IRA, which it is for most people, that withdrawal is fully taxable as ordinary income. Let's say they're in the 12% federal tax bracket plus 5% state tax. That's 17% total. Their $20,000 withdrawal becomes $16,600 after taxes. That's $1,383 per month. Can you live on $1,383 per month? Maybe if you own your home outright, have no debt, and live in a low cost of living area, Maybe, but most 65-year-olds still have expenses. Medicare premiums average $174 per month for Part B, plus another $50 for Part D prescription coverage, plus supplemental insurance of about $150 per month. That's $374 per month just for health insurance. You're down to $1,009 per month for everything else: food, utilities, property taxes, home maintenance, car insurance, gas, phone, internet, clothing, personal care, entertainment, everything. $1,009 per month. That's $33 per day. And we haven't even talked about what happens when something goes wrong. But it gets worse because we're not accounting for inflation. The official inflation rate has averaged 3% per year over the last 20 years, but healthcare inflation, which is a massive expense for retirees, has averaged 5 to 6% per year. So let's use 4% as a blended inflation rate for retirees. In year 2, they need to withdraw $20,800 to maintain the same purchasing power. After taxes, that's $17,264, or $1,438 per month. In year 5, they need $23,400 before taxes, or $19,422 after taxes, $1,618 per month. In year 10, they need $29,200 before taxes, or $24,236 after taxes, $2,019 per month. Here's the problem. Their account balance isn't growing fast enough to support these increasing withdrawals. Even if their investments average 7% annual returns, which is optimistic given that they should be in a conservative allocation in retirement, the combination of withdrawals and taxes and inflation is eating the principal. Let's run the full simulation. Starting balance, $500,000. Year 1 withdrawal, $20,000. Investment return, 7%. Ending balance, $515,000. Okay, actually went up. Year 2 withdrawal, $20,800. Investment return, 7%. Ending balance, $528,505. Still growing. This looks fine, right? Let's introduce reality. Markets don't return 7% every single year. They return 15% some years, negative 10% other years, and average out to around 7% over time. And the order in which those returns happen matters enormously. If you retire right before a market crash, you're withdrawing money from a shrinking portfolio, lacking in losses, and permanently reducing the amount that can grow when the market recovers. This is called sequence of returns risk, and it's the silent killer of retirement portfolios. Let's run the same scenario, but with realistic market returns. Year 1, market returns negative 8%. You still need to withdraw your $20,000 because you need to live. Starting balance, $500,000. Loss of 8% is $40,000. Withdrawal of $20,000. Ending balance, $440,000. You lost $60,000 in 1 year. Year 2, market returns negative 5%. You need to withdraw $20,800 adjusted for inflation. Starting balance, $440,000. Loss of 5% is $22,000. Withdrawal of $20,800. Ending balance, $397,200. You've now lost $102,800 in 2 years. Year 3, the market recovers and returns 12%. Starting balance, $397,200. Gain of 12% is $47,664, but you still need to withdraw $21,632. Ending balance, $423,232. You recovered some, but you're still down $76,668 from your starting point. And here's the devastating part. Because you withdrew money during the down years, you have less principal remaining to benefit from the recovery. You locked in losses that can never be recovered. This is sequence of returns risk, and it can destroy a retirement portfolio, even if average returns over time look fine. Studies show that if you retire into a bear market, your portfolio has about a 50% chance of running out of money within 20 years, even if you're following the 4% rule. If you retire into a bull market, your chances are much better. But you can't control when you retire relative to market cycles. And for someone retiring today, with stock valuations at historically high levels, with bond yields at historically low levels, with inflation rising, the probability of running out of money is higher than it's been in decades. But let's continue the simulation, assuming average returns. Even in the best-case scenario, where you get steady 7% returns every year, your $500,000 following the 4% rule, adjusted for 4% inflation, runs out in year 23. You're 88 years old and broke. And that's the best-case scenario. That assumes no major healthcare expenses, no long-term care, no helping your kids or grandkids financially, no market crashes, no unexpected expenses, just a smooth, predictable 23 years, and then you're out of money. Now here's what actually happens to most retirees. Healthcare expenses explode as you age. The average 65-year-old will spend about $165,000 on out-of-pocket healthcare costs over the remainder of their life. That includes Medicare premiums, supplemental insurance, copays, prescriptions, dental, vision, hearing aids, and services Medicare doesn't cover. But that's just the average. If you have a chronic condition, if you need surgery, if you end up needing long-term care, the costs skyrocket. Long-term care is the big one that destroys retirement savings. About 70% of people over 65 will need some form of long-term care. A nursing home costs an average of $108,000 per year. Assisted living costs about $54,000 per year. In-home care costs about $30 per hour, and if you need full-time care, that's over $200,000 per year. Medicare doesn't cover long-term care. It covers up to 100 days in a skilled nursing facility after a hospitalization, and that's it. Everything else is out of pocket, unless you have long-term care insurance, which most people don't because it's expensive. So let's add one realistic scenario. You're 78 years old, 13 years into retirement. Your $500,000 has been drawn down to about $280,000 following the 4% rule. You have a stroke. You spend 3 months in rehabilitation. Then you need assisted living because you can't live independently anymore. Assisted living costs $54,000 per year. Your portfolio can't support that level of withdrawal plus your normal living expenses. You're forced to liquidate the entire portfolio within 5 years. At 83, you're broke. You go on Medicaid. You lose any control over where you live or what kind of care you receive. This isn't a nightmare scenario. This is reality for millions of Americans. A 2019 study found that 45% of middle-class retirees will run out of money during retirement. Not poor people, middle-class people who saved, who did the right things, who had $500,000 or more in retirement accounts. They still ran out. And the primary reasons weren't frivolous spending or bad investments. They were healthcare costs, longevity, and sequence of returns risk. Let's talk about longevity, because this is the other factor that destroys the math. The 4% rule assumes you retire at 65 and live to 95, a 30-year retirement. But life expectancies are increasing. A 65-year-old today has a 50% chance of living to 85, a 25% chance of living to 90, and about a 10% chance of living to 95. If you're healthy, don't smoke, have good genetics, those probabilities go up significantly. And if you're married, the probability that at least one of you lives into your 90s is over 50%. Let's say you live to 92. That's 27 years of retirement. Your $500,000 was already barely lasting 23 years in the best-case scenario. Now you need it to last 27 years. The math doesn't work. You either run out of money at 88 and struggle for 4 years, or you have to reduce your withdrawal rate below 4%, which means living on even less money than the already tight $1,383 per month we calculated. And we haven't even discussed taxes yet. Most people have traditional 401ks and IRAs where they get a tax deduction going in, but pay taxes coming out. Every dollar you withdraw is taxed as ordinary income. But here's the trap. At 73, you're required to start taking required minimum distributions, RMDs. The IRS forces you to withdraw a percentage of your account each year, whether you need the money or not. And that percentage increases as you age. At 73, the RMD is about 3.77% of your account balance. At 80, it's 5.35%. At 90, it's 8.77%. With $500,000 at age 73, your RMD is about $18,850. You have to withdraw that and pay taxes on it, even if you don't need the money. And if you're still working part-time or have Social Security income, that RMD could push you into a higher tax bracket, meaning you're paying 22% or even 24% federal tax on withdrawals instead of 12%. This is what I mean when I say $500,000 isn't nearly as much money as it sounds like. Between taxes, inflation, healthcare costs, longevity, and sequence of returns risk, $500,000 in retirement savings is fragile. It's enough if everything goes right, but the moment something goes wrong, and something always goes wrong, you're in trouble. Now let's compare this to what you actually need. There's a rule of thumb that says you need 25 times your annual expenses saved to retire safely. If you need $40,000 per year to live, you need $1 million saved. If you need $60,000 per year, you need $1.5 million. This is based on a 4% withdrawal rate, which, as we've discussed, is already aggressive in today's environment. Let's be more realistic. If you want a high probability of not running out of money, you should plan for a 3% withdrawal rate, especially if you're retiring early or expecting a long retirement. That means you need 33 times your annual expenses. If you need $40,000 per year, you need $1.32 million. If you need $60,000 per year, you need $2 million. And that's just to cover basic living expenses. That doesn't include legacy planning, helping your children, major travel, unexpected opportunities, or any financial flexibility. If you want those things, add another 25 to 50% to the number. Suddenly, the amount you actually need for a comfortable, secure retirement is $1.5 million to $3 million, depending on your lifestyle. Most people hear this and panic because they're nowhere close, and I get it. Saving $2 million seems impossible when you're making $70,000 a year. But here's the thing. It's not impossible if you start early and you're strategic. Let me show you the math. If you start investing at 25 and contribute $500 per month to a retirement account, averaging 10% annual returns, by 65, you'll have $3.16 million. If you start at 30, same contribution, you'll have $1.95 million. If you start at 35, you'll have $1.18 million. If you start at 40, you'll have $700,000. If you start at 45, you'll have $411,000. Starting late is the single biggest reason people end up with inadequate retirement savings. But let's say you're 45 and you only have $100,000 saved. You're behind. What do? You have three options. Option 1, increase your savings rate dramatically. If you can contribute $1,500 per month from 45 to 65, you'll end up with about $1.3 million. That's $18,000 per year, which is aggressive but doable if you make it a priority. Option 2, work longer. If you work until 70 instead of 65, you gain 5 extra years of contributions, plus 5 extra years of compound growth, plus 5 fewer years you need your savings to last. That same $100,000 at 45, plus $500 per month contributions, becomes $1.08 million by 70 instead of $700,000 by 65. And if you only need it to last 20 years instead of 25, you can use a higher withdrawal rate. Working longer is the most powerful retirement lever most people have. Let's be option 3. Reduce your retirement expenses. If you can live on $30,000 per year instead of $50,000, you need $750,000 to $1 million instead of $1.25 million to $1.67 million. This is where downsizing your home, moving to a lower cost of living area, eliminating debt before retirement, and building a frugal lifestyle become critical. You can't control market returns. You can control your spending. Ideally, you do all three. Save more, work a little longer, and reduce expenses. That combination can take you from inadequate savings to a comfortable retirement. But you have to be realistic about the math. You have to run the numbers honestly, not optimistically. You have to plan for the worst-case scenarios, not the best case. Here's what most people get wrong. They look at their $500,000 balance and think, I'm good. They don't calculate the actual withdrawal amount after taxes. They don't factor in healthcare inflation. They don't account for sequence of returns risk. They don't plan for long-term care. They just see the big number and feel relieved. And then they retire and realize within 5 years that the money isn't going to last. Let me give you a real example. Meet Tom and Linda. Tom is 66, Linda is 64. Tom just retired from his job making $85,000 per year. Linda is still working part-time making $30,000. They have $520,000 in retirement savings. They own their home, worth about $400,000, with $120,000 left on the mortgage. They have $15,000 in credit card debt from some home renovations. They're planning for Linda to retire in 2 years. They think they're fine. They ran a retirement calculator that told them they have a 78% probability of success. But that calculator made optimistic assumptions. It assumed 8% average returns. It assumed 2.5% inflation. It assumed they'd spend less in retirement than they do now. It didn't account for their debt. It didn't account for their mortgage. It didn't account for realistic healthcare costs. Here's their actual situation. Their $520,000 at a 4% withdrawal rate gives them $20,800 per year, or $1,733 per month after taxes. Their mortgage payment is $1,100 per month. They're already in the red by $633 per month, and that's before food, utilities, insurance, gas, or anything else. They have to draw down their savings just to cover the mortgage. Within 10 years, they'll have drained their retirement accounts to about $200,000 while still owing $40,000 on the house. By their late 70s, they'll be broke. The correct move for Tom and Linda is to sell the house now, pay off the mortgage and credit card debt, downsize to a paid-off smaller home or rent, and invest the remaining equity. If they sell for $400,000, pay off $135,000 in debt, and buy a smaller home for $200,000 cash, they have $65,000 left over. Add that to their $520,000 retirement savings, they now have $585,000 and no housing payment except insurance and taxes. Now the 4% rule actually works. They can withdraw $23,400 per year or $1,950 per month after taxes with no mortgage. They can survive on that. But they won't do it because emotionally they can't imagine leaving their home. They raise their kids there. They have memories there. And selling feels like admitting defeat. So they'll stay, drain their savings, and end up selling the house in their 70s anyway under financial duress, getting a worse price and having fewer options. This is how pride destroys retirements. Here's what you need to do if you're looking at retirement with $500,000 or less. First, calculate your real number, not what you hope you'll need, what you'll actually need. Take your current expenses, subtract work-related expenses like commuting, add healthcare costs, add a 15% buffer for unexpected expenses, multiply by 33 for a conservative estimate, or 25 for an aggressive estimate. That's your target number. Second, if you're short of that target and you're more than 10 years from retirement, increase your savings rate immediately. Every $100 per month you add now is worth $75,000 to $150,000 at retirement, depending on your timeline. Cut expenses, kill convenience spending, eliminate debt, and pour every available dollar into retirement savings. Here's their third. If you're within 10 years of retirement and you're short, you have to make hard choices. Work longer, downsize your lifestyle, relocate to a cheaper area, or some combination. There's no magic solution. You can't invest your way out of inadequate savings at 60. The math doesn't work. Fourth, get your money out of expensive funds. If you're paying 1% or more in fees, you're giving up 20% to 30% of your retirement wealth over time. Move everything to low-cost index funds with expense ratios under 0.1%. Every 1% you pay in fees requires you to save an additional $100,000 to have the same retirement outcome. Fifth, do a Roth conversion analysis. If you have money in traditional 401ks and IRAs, you might benefit from converting some to Roth IRAs, especially in years when your income is lower. You'll pay taxes on the conversion, but then the money grows tax-free forever, and there are no RMDs. This requires careful planning, but it can save you 6 figures in taxes over retirement. Sixth, plan for healthcare and long-term care. Get quotes for long-term care insurance if you're in your 50s and healthy. It's expensive, but it's cheaper than paying out of pocket. Consider a health savings account if you're eligible. Max it out every year. It's triple tax advantaged and can be used for healthcare and retirement. I want to leave you with one final thought because I think it changes everything. Retirement isn't a number, it's a withdrawal rate. You don't need $500,000 or $1 million or $2 million. You need enough money that you can safely withdraw what you need to live without running out. If you need $30,000 per year and you have $1 million, you're in great shape. If you need $80,000 per year and you have $1 million, you're in trouble. Third, the sooner you understand this, the sooner you can plan realistically. Most people focus on accumulation. I need to save $1 million, but they don't think about distribution. How long will that actually last? The distribution phase is where retirements succeed or fail. And $500,000 for most people in most scenarios won't last 10 years unless you're extremely frugal, extremely lucky, or have other income sources. This isn't meant to depress you, it's meant to wake you up. If you're 30 or 40 or even 50, you have time to fix this, but you have to start now. If you're already retired with $500,000, you need to make adjustments immediately. Cut spending, consider part-time work, downsize, relocate, do whatever it takes to make the math work. Because the alternative is running out of money at 75 or 80 and having no options. The families who thrive in retirement aren't the ones who got lucky. They're the ones who planned realistically, saved aggressively, and made hard decisions early enough that compound interest could work its magic. You can be one of those families, but you have to stop believing that $500,000 is enough. For most people, it's not even close. If this video changed how you think about retirement savings, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe to the Penny Plan for more content that tells you the truth about money, not the comfortable lies. Your $500,000 might not last 10 years. The question is, what are you going to do about it?